Last week we covered FNAF 6's Trash in the Gang models and the Mediocre Melodies models. This week I want to look at the Rockstar animatronics and the Posh Pizzeria animatronics. Before we get this video started, let's remind you on a face, vertex, and edge. A vertices is the point at which triangles will meet, or these guys right here. An edge is the lines that make up a triangle, so one triangle would have 3 individual edges. And a face, otherwise known as a tri, is just simply what you can imagine it is, the actual face of the triangle. Now that that's out of the way, we're going to start with Rockstar Freddy. This model sits at 152,120 faces and 300,332 edges. One of the main differences I want to look at right away that no other Freddy model has had before is a pink top hat. A very interesting choice for Rockstar Freddy, but I do think that it sits nicely on top of his head there. His ears are almost exactly the same as Ned Bear's if you remember from the previous episode we did, and almost kind of hints at them being made by the same manufacturer, but it's probably just Scott reusing assets. You'll notice that this version of Freddy looks way more happy than any version of Freddy we've ever seen previously, with a nice big smile on his face, rounded off brick-like teeth, and those glowing cheeks that we remember seeing from the toy animatronics. You can see here that he's also posing his ultimate custom night pose, which he uses after you beat one of the knights. Rockstar Freddy and all the other Rockstars have these nice hand models with little ball joints on each little segment of each finger, and you'll also notice that this Rockstar Freddy has one of the nicest mic models we've ever seen an animatronic hold. A nice purple handle with a fully blacked out microphone, and what seems to be a Bluetooth adapter at the end of it. But who knows, maybe it's not. And just like the rest of the Rockstar animatronics, Rockstar Freddy has a big star on his chest, although it does look a little tattered with a little bit of dust and debris. Maybe it's time to give Freddy an old wash down, but who knows. You can see his feet are actually a little bit different than the first ever Freddy model, having 4 toes and looking a lot better than the actual first Freddy's feet, with individual toe segments and all. Rockstar Freddy's knees also actually match the cheek color and the eyelid color as well, as is the case with the rest of the Rockstar animatronics. Other than that, this model is pretty simple, with not too much different from the rest of the Freddys, so let's move on to Bonnie. This model contains 141,869 faces and 284,437 edges. Now, just like Freddy, Bonnie also has those rosy cheeks, just like the toy animatronics, with the matching kneecap colors being purple. However, one thing that sticks out about Rockstar Bonnie is she actually has 2 stars on her chest, unlike the other animatronics. Who's to say why they made this choice with Rockstar Bonnie, but it is pretty cool to see that it has gotten an extra gold star. Rockstar Bonnie retains a lot of those similar features we've known from previous Bonnie iterations, with those long ears, a slightly deviated color of blue for the snout, and a red bow tie, and also his classic guitar. Although it does definitely look a little different from what Bonnie usually has. This guitar is a little bit more tattered, has no white on it like Bonnie's did originally, but unlike Pigpatch's banjo, does have tuning sticks. This model doesn't use a lot of polys either, so it's good to see that they were able to conserve some polys on this. Just like Freddy, Bonnie has very similar arms, legs, feet, and stays pretty true to the Rockstar style of animatronics. Up next we have Rockstar Chica. This model contains 117,551 faces and 234,958 edges. Now, unlike previous Chica models, this model actually does not have differentiated foot models. In fact, it uses the exact same models as the rest of the Rockstar animatronics, but just has a little bit of color deviation. And something that Chica's also never had before is a set of maracas. Although they don't use too many polys, they sure do use a nice texture to wrap all the way around the actual head of the maraca. Another standout point is that Chica's bib actually doesn't say "let's eat" like it normally does. Instead, it says "let's rock," to kind of fit with the theme of the Rockstar animatronics. Something else that's interesting about this model is it doesn't come with the cupcake, and I can't even begin to theorize why this model doesn't come with the cupcake, and maybe it doesn't matter at all, but it is something to point out. Just like the other ones we've covered, it also has those blue toy cheeks with matching blue kneecaps, but unlike the rest of the Rockstar animatronics, does not have a star on its chest, as it would be covered up by that "let's rock" bib. But I guess who's to say if it does actually have a star underneath it, because we can't really see. She does still have the 3 feathers on top of her head, and also the orange legs that go all the way up to the kneecaps, but she does have a pair of red lips right at the end of her beak, which is something we haven't seen before, and something that definitely is pretty interesting. And finally, for the Rockstars, we have Rockstar Foxy. This model contains 167,676 faces and 337,535 edges. This Rockstar seems to have the thinnest arms, legs, and torso of any of the actual Rockstar animatronics. And when we go into edit mode to see the polys, the actual accordion does get a little skewed off, so you'll just have to use your imagination here. Unlike the rest of the Rockstar animatronics, this animatronic actually does not have any rosy red cheeks, but still has those rosy red kneecaps. And just like Foxy always does, he has the hook on his right hand and an eye patch slung over his right eye. Something that's different about this Foxy though is he is actually fully intact, something we rarely ever see out of a standard Foxy. We have seen it from Funtime Foxy, but not ever a Foxy model before. He also has those gold pirate's teeth as a Foxy model should always have, although they do look a little bit sharper than they normally would on a Foxy model, which is pretty interesting. Something else that's different about this model is the parrot on his shoulder. Something we've never seen Foxy have in the game before, and is it a little interesting detail. There's not too much detail on this parrot as it's mostly just made up of torso, wings, and head. But just like Foxy, he does have an eye patch slung over his right eye as well, and some thin, but pretty funny looking eyebrows, something a bird usually never has in real life. Foxy also has that classic peg leg, and also shares the exact same foot model as the rest of these animatronics, which just goes to show that they wanted to keep these Rockstars pretty uniform in how they made them. Now, I know there's obviously one Rockstar animatronic we're leaving out, which is Lefty, but I think that would be better to save for the actual final part of this series, where we cover all of the dangerous scrapped animatronics, and also a few extras like Candy Cadet. Now to move on to the Posh Pizzeria, and let's start off with Funtime Chica. This model has the most faces of any model we're going to look at today, containing 315,331 faces, and 624,212 edges. Obviously, this model is the Chica variation of the Funtime animatronics, containing 4 different facial plates, those rosy pink cheeks, and a very stringy endoskeleton underneath. Just like the Funtime, she also does have a speaker, although this one isn't placed directly on her chest, but instead more towards her stomach. I'm sure it would have the same effect as the rest of the Funtimes, but we never really do get too much information on Funtime Chica. Something that's interesting about this model is when T-pose, the cupcake is held upside down, but with a little bit of reorienting, we can get him upright. You can tell too that this model also does have these little segmented parts like all the Funtimes usually have. And unlike previous cupcakes, this cupcake has significantly sharper teeth. Usually the cupcake only has squared off or buck teeth, but this model is very, very deadly looking. Similarly though to the old cupcake, it retains the same pink strawberry-esque frosting, with a nice candle right smack dab in the middle. Just like the cupcake, Chica also does have some pretty sharp teeth on both her beak and her endo, which isn't unusual as we've seen her with a little bit sharper teeth in her toy animatronic era, specifically when she takes her beak off, although they aren't nearly as sharp as the ones we see here with Funtime Chicas. This version of Chica has bright pink eyebrows as well, which is pretty interesting to see, and also has very long eyelashes. Unlike most of the Funtimes, Chica only has 3 toes, but they do retain similar aspects to what a Funtime animatronic's feet would look like. She also still retains the orange all the way up to the kneecaps that a Chica usually does. Up next we have Music Man, who sits at 165,946 faces and 333,640 edges. Now this model is unlike most models we've ever seen in this game and holds the record for the most legs given to an animatronic. A significant portion of polys are definitely used on each leg, which probably drives up the poly count significantly. If we look at the bottom, they're more of a suction cup than an actual base for a foot, with sort of a hollowed out concave bottom to him. Music Man really does resemble a spider in both the legs and also the eyes, as they're completely blacked out with no differentiation in eye color, cornea, or whites of the eyes at all even. This model looks heavily based on the Funtime animatronic models as well, having a speaker in the middle, very similar white, pink, and purple color schemes, and that glossy finish that we usually only saw on Funtime animatronics. However, his face doesn't seem to split into multiple different segments, and he doesn't have that spirally endo that we usually see with the Funtime. That being said, I'm sure it was still based off the Funtimes, just not entirely. The symbols on his hands remain pretty simplistic, but have a little bit of concave in the middle and convex on the outside, as a symbol should, but unlike a symbol, has these little actual handrails that go around his actual hand, that are used for the animatronic to hold on to. Usually a symbol that would be held by someone would only have a string or a ribbon that would actually be right smack dab in the center of the actual symbol, as to not mute any of the symbol's noise. And to bring it back to his chest, instead of just one speaker, he has 3 different speakers. One smack dab in the middle, which resembles the previous Funtime animatronic speakers, and one above and below, which do not resemble any of the other speakers we've seen. They're more of a trapezoid type of shape. His arms are also very simplistic and skinny until it gets to about the forearm area, where it seems that he has Popeye-esque forearms. But overall, even with the complexity of all the polys, this model does remain fairly simplistic, not having too much detail aside from just straight metal bars that branch out into arms and legs, the most detail being on his actual torso and head. He also has one of the biggest noses we've ever seen in the FNAF games. I mean, just take a look at this honker. And just like Chica, he also has pink eyebrows, however these are a lot bushier than any other animatronics as well. He does have small circular cheeks like the toy animatronics, and they do match the color scheme that he's going with, but something about this model is just definitely unsettling. And finally, we have El Chip. This model has 256,205 faces and 502,670 edges. This is one of my favorite models of the video, and it's no question as to why. This model is actually based off of Chipper & Sons Lumber Co., one of the last games Scott ever made before getting into his FNAF era. And honestly, this animatronic resembles the Rockstar animatronics more than the actual Posh Pizzeria gang. The only thing he's missing is a star along his chest, and if that was included, I'm sure he'd fit right in. He has a very similar head shape to Rockstar Freddy, with those bright red rosy cheeks, a little bit bigger of a nose to kind of resemble what a beaver's might look like, and a similar red eyelid as well. His ears, arms, legs, feet, and hands all are very, very similar to Rockstar Freddy. There does seem to be a little bit of differentiation in the hands. Maybe they're a bit thicker, or maybe I'm just seeing things, but they do generally resemble the Rockstar animatronics hands. And his feet also do have those segmented toes with a big ballast at the bottom of them. My guess is that Scott really wanted to include this in the Rockstar animatronics, but just could not get himself to do it. But still couldn't leave this model out of the game. One thing that's very interesting about Chipper is the absolute size of his tail. This thing is a tarp. I'd assume it accounts for at least 1/5 to 1/6 of the actual polys used on this animatronic, as it is a monster of a tail and the biggest tail we've ever seen an animatronic have. L-Chip also holds what I believe to be a ukulele, although I'm no guitar expert, which just like previous guitar models that we've seen in FNAF 6 is modeled really well. The bridges, the drum, and the neck of the guitar is all there, although this one does use quite a few more polys than any of the other guitars we've taken a look at. This ukulele, just like Pig Patch's banjo, doesn't have any tuning sticks, and I'm not too sure how accurate that is, as I think usually ukuleles do have tuning sticks. But then again, like I just said, I'm no guitar expert. And to top it all off, L-Chip has the best hat in all of Five Nights at Freddy's, with a sombrero on top of his head that, again, probably makes up another 1/5 of his poly count. This bad boy is ginormous and is the biggest hat we've also seen in the FNAF series, with a lot of great texture detailing. The little spheres at the tip of the sombrero also probably utilize quite a few polys, with each maybe made up of around 200 to 300 if I were to guess, but definitely are required to add that extra little touch to the actual sombrero. One quick interesting thing before we wrap this video up is, unlike the Rockstar animatronics, this animatronic does not have the same colored kneecaps as it does its cheek, but since it's not in the Rockstar class, it doesn't need to. Just something I thought was interesting, since it is heavily based off the Rockstar animatronics. Other than that, that's all the animatronics we have to look at today. Last week we covered the Trash in the Gang and Mediocre Melodies animatronics, so if you're interested in seeing what those models look like, go take a look at that video. And next week we're going to cover the scrapped animatronics and a few extras. So if you think you'll be interested in that video, subscribe to the channel and wait till next week when that video drops. Other than that, I appreciate you watching all the way to the end. If you have any opinions on this video, leave it in the comments below, and I will see you next week. Peace.